Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another week of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and this week we have Isiah McKimmie. She is a sex and couples therapist, a sexologist, and coach who has been helping women and couples discover deeper intimacy and desire for over a decade. One of the most qualified sex and relationship experts in Australia, she holds a master's degree in relational psychotherapy, a master's degree in science in medicine, and a postgraduate diploma of sexology and a certificate from the prestigious Institute for the Advanced Studies of Human Sexuality. She is passionate, understanding, and absolutely non-judgmental. She built her reputation on getting results and helping her clients live happier lives. So I had to bring Isiah on the podcast because she is, first of all, her qualifications as being an expert in all things sex and sexuality is off the hook. So I wanted to just talk to her about a few topics. And today we talk about sex with soul. And you know that sex is a common topic on this podcast, but also in like sacred sexuality. That's like really my jam. And so when I heard this title, Sex with Soul, it was something where I knew I wanted to learn more about it. So we talk so much about that and how to really cultivate that in your current relationship. It's really fascinating stuff. So you definitely want to tune into that. And she also gives tips on like how to go about doing that and how to get your partner to kind of be all in with the bringing soul into sex. And the other big topic we talked about was something called living apart together, which is something, to be honest with you, is something I would absolutely opt to doing. So it's when two people are together, they're dating, and they're in a relationship, and they live apart. They don't eventually move in together really. They could have separate homes. Sometimes they're mixed and blended families type of thing, but they live separately, but they maybe will sleep over in each other's places a few times a week. And I have seen this work for a couple of my girlfriends. And you know what? I think it's something that I would do. I don't know. I feel like I love my space. And I love the freedom of that as well. And I'm definitely open to being in a relationship, yes, and being in a serious relationship. But for me, my next thought isn't about when are we going to move in together? Because I don't know. I'm saying that now, and that could definitely change, in the next couple of years. But I really love having, also my partner having his own space as well, to do his own thing and to have his own space too. If he just wants to chill by himself one night and just stay home or be out with his buddies, it's totally fine. And, we each have our own lives. And I don't know, there's just something about that, especially if you're already sort of in a home and you're kind of grounded and you love your place and you not really want to leave it. And vice versa, if he feels the same way about his place. So I don't know. We talk all about that, and it's sort of actually becoming a trend. So tune into that. And without further ado, on to the show. And this week we have a couples and sex therapist, Isiah McKimmie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Margaret.
So there was something about your website that really drew me to you. And you talk about all things sex and sexuality and sensuality. And I knew that I really wanted to just jam with you, this conversation that I love talking about this stuff. So I wanted to just talk like a topic that's actually always on my mind. I'm single and dating, and this is definitely a topic that I frequently think about. And I've also talked about it a couple times on the podcast, but I would love your take on it. And that's about sex with soul. And for me, that means, having sex on a much deeper level, and that level of intimacy that just seems to be something that I would want my future relationships to have. Or relationship to have. But I would love your take on this. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, so sex with soul is, I guess that's become one of the most important aspects of sex and sexuality to me. When I began exploring this work, I had enjoyed sex and I was kind of excited by it. And as I, started to let go of my shame and my inhibitions, I found more and more things to kind of try and explore. But then I kind of got to a point where I was like, actually, this kind of wild, passionate, exciting, crazy sex is fun, but it's not what I want most from sex. What I really want is this deep connection and presence and intimacy and vulnerability. That is what I see sex with soul as being.
Mm-hmm. And how does one cultivate this? And is it something that, if you really didn't have it in the beginning, is it something that can be cultivated, or is it something that you kind of need to talk with your, I don't know. How do you cultivate it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is something that you can cultivate, and it doesn't mean that every sexual experience with your partner is then, going to be the same, and it's going to be slow, and it's going to be about a lot of eye gazing. For me, sex with soul actually starts with ourselves. It starts with being really deeply connected to ourselves and our own bodies, because then we can be present to someone else. So only when we're fully present to ourselves and our own experience can we be present to someone else, and then we can open into vulnerability and the beautiful depths of intimacy with them. So to start cultivating it is to really come back to yourself, because then we'll also draw a partner deeper when we're in that place, or they'll get totally freaked out by it, and they won't want to be at level of presence and connection with us.
Right.
And find someone who does want to be.
Now, how does a woman, get to know themselves and their bodies? Like, how do they know if they do or not? Like, how is it a woman that's really able to know her own pleasure? That she's able to, have practices of self-pleasure? What is that? What type of woman is that?
So for me, this really, it comes back to kind of a self-awareness of being able to recognize your emotions when they're there, being able to recognize what it is that you want, what it is that you deeply desire, and bring voice to that. To have the courage to kind of bring voice to it, to move from like that thinking, busy mind down into the body where you're feeling your emotions. It's like you also are feeling those gut feelings to tell what it is that you want. And from that place, then we can kind of start to explore more around what we want sexually and what we enjoy. Sex with soul for me might be slightly different to sex with soul for someone else, and what you enjoy about it might be different. But it's first really having that self-awareness, bringing ourselves back where we can feel sensations, where we can feel emotions in our bodies, and then being guided from there.
Mm. And so, so obvious, it looks different for everyone how a woman is connected to her own body. And then let's say that she is. Let's say she connected. She knows what she loves. She knows what she desires. She knows how she wants to be seen and felt. And what does that conversation sound like when you have a new partner? And that's the kind of intimacy that you want to engage with a new partner. How do you really bring it up? Because I feel that men can kind of make things really fast, and they want to do things really fast. And so to reach that level of intimacy, I think that there needs to be time, but there needs to be awareness on his part too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, for both of you. And I think it's never just one conversation around this. It's, can I show more of myself? Can I show my emotions before we even get into the bedroom? Can you hold me in this space of presence and vulnerability even before we get in to the bedroom? And I think absolutely we should go, as quickly or as slowly into intimacy as feels right for us with that particular person. For me now, sometimes I am still kind of quick moving to that place when I think back over, my current relationship and my previous one. Sometimes there is a quickness to moving to intimacy there, but sometimes for me that has also been a bit slower because I wanted it to unfold. So I think it's about really, trusting ourselves on that. It not just being one conversation, knowing that, all our other conversations about emotions and what do you want from a relationship? What are you looking for? So what excites you about intimacy? What is intimacy to you? That doesn't just have to be one conversation and one conversation around sex. That it's it can be a number of conversations and something that you probably deepen into as well the more you get to know each other.
And so is this something that, let's say a man has never been, or a partner, man, woman, has never been approached, or no one's ever really wanted to go sort of this deep. They've never really experienced it before. And you bring it up, you kind of talk about it. Are there some practices that you can do that maybe he or she would be open to?
I always, it can be like a kind of cliche one for anyone who's done like Tantra or sacred sexuality, but actually just being able to look at each other in the eyes without needing to say or do anything, I think is a really powerful one and can be a gauge of our ability to be really present with someone. I think even as we're moving towards that sexual space with someone, where we're getting cues and signals from them. How do they touch our hands, for example? And if we're just holding hands, what is the presence of that touch like? Do they respond to us? Perhaps moving their hand away or not enjoying something or inviting them to to come even deeper.
Okay. And so you're kind of looking for some clues as to how they respond to intimate touch and things like that?
Yeah, I think the kind of intimacy that we have outside the bedroom, around eye contact, sharing of emotions, touch, their presence and attention to us is really giving us some clues about how they will be in the bedroom and around sex with us.
Okay. And is this what Tantra is all about? Or
Yeah, it is essentially, we often know Tantra for its, its sexual practices, and people have heard that Sting can have sex for 9 hours, or, Tantra's
Right.
going to help you have like 15-minute orgasms. And okay, and firstly, you don't need to have sex for 9 hours to practice Tantra or Sex with Soul. I always like to clear that one up. People are like, oh my God, 9 hours. I'm not even sure I have 2 hours. But it's really it's so much more than that. And really, when we look at the philosophy and the teachings of Tantra, it's really about connection to self, and then being able to be present to someone else, and to have that kind of presence and connection and awareness during sex as well.
Okay. And is there, I feel like that I've heard that there's like a lot of breath work with Tantra as well.
Yeah, there definitely can be. I mean, breath work is a way that we can change our state. It's a way that we can help generate sexual energy, move that energy through the body. It's a way we can calm the mind and bring ourselves to presence. I always say that, Tantra really is similar to yoga. There's breath work that's really, really helpful. And I guess the depth that you want to explore that at is really up to you. But the breathing can be really helpful. When you ask that question about the breathing, I'm writing a book about some of my experiences at the moment, and I remember one of the first men that I was kind of working with in an intimate way, helping him with the sexual dysfunction. I don't work this way anymore, but I was kind of working one-on-one, teaching him some really practical things. And the first thing he said to me in the session was, "Oh, you're not going to make me breathe, are you? Because the last woman I saw wanted me to breathe." And it's right on the top of my mind because I was writing about it just yesterday. It's like, yeah, the breathing is just a really valuable tool that we have in Tantra, although it's not the only tool that we have.
Okay. Got it. So moving on to, we're talking about Sex with Soul, but let's talk a little bit about relationships or marriages that have that do not have sex, and they've been sexless for some time. And how do you guide these couples into, and sort of, how does one help guide the other to, how does, it sounds like a painful experience, I guess, to, let's say you want to, but your partner doesn't, and you haven't in a really, really long time. And so how do you kind of manage your way through that?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's such a big question. Sometime towards the end of last year, I wrote a blog post around this because it's one of the most common issues that couples come to me with now, as as I work as a couples therapist and sex therapist. It's actually couples who are not having sex or are having sex so infrequently that I help the most. And the blog post that I wrote about it was where to start when you haven't had sex in months or even years. And it has been by far the most popular thing that I've ever written, and has easily outperformed blog posts that that I wrote years ago and that have been on my site.
Wow.
This is something that's so much more common than we realize, and something that we really struggle to talk about, so much. Unfortunately, there can be, a lot of shame and embarrassment around it. So, I really want to start with just letting anyone who's in this position know, you're just not alone in this. This is a lot more common than we realize. And for some people, it might be sex happens like, oh, okay, it's like, oh, it happens once a month or twice a month if we're lucky, or, twice a year. Or, I know that, couples will come to me and they'll tell me remember the last date that they had sex 3 or 4 years ago. Or they can tell me they've had sex twice in the past 5 years. So it's really, it's really a lot more common than we realize. And it really can cause a lot of pain and frustration and sadness for couples as well. And particularly when one partner wants intimacy more than the other. So I always say that the first step in kind of reigniting this kind of sexual intimacy, and whether you're, having sex, kind of frequently, or you haven't had sex in a long time, is to decide that it's important to you, or to decide that it's important to you because it's important to your partner. And that's one of the agreements that you came into relationship with. So in knowing that it's important to us, or that, if it's important to our partner, it needs to be important to us, that can start to change our mindset around it. Instead of telling ourselves, oh, I don't care if I never have sex again, I wish I didn't even have to think about it, we can kind of start to see it as, oh, actually, no, I see this as something valuable. And like anything, a sex life, we can kind of talk about it like a garden. Really, relationships and sex is like a garden or a plant that we need to tend to. It doesn't grow and thrive on its own. We need to give it some tender, loving care. Our relationships and sexual intimacy is absolutely the same. So we just have to know we're going to need to put some effort and attention into that. I then say, like, the next step to that is making sure you have a really solid connection outside the bedroom as well. So if you're arguing, or you're experiencing tension, or you have a buildup of resentment because you're just not telling your partner the things that are on your mind, that's going to get in the way of you being able to, to really work on this together, and connect in this way. So working on your connection outside the bedroom, sharing appreciation for your partner, looking for the things that you love about them, and helping them feel really loved and connected is, it's really great, I guess, motivation for both of you going in to work on your sexual intimacy as well. And rebuilding a sex life, I talk about it often as like, we have to build the foundation, and then we have to build brick by brick. So it's not all going to happen at once. Rome wasn't built in a day. So it's about taking steps that feel right for each of you. You have to feel comfortable every step of the way. So you might start by just getting back into physical touch again. That doesn't lead to sex. Because, one of the things when couples are not having sex, or when one partner doesn't want to, physical touch and just general intimate physical touch stops because they're afraid of where it will lead to. Oh, I don't want to hug my partner. He or she might think that I'm open for sex, and then it's going to end in an argument. Or, when I hug my partner, I get turned on, and I know I'm just going to be disappointed. So you stop touching each other altogether. So we want to start with just loving physical touch as a way of starting to feel comfortable with each other again. But there's a great hormone called oxytocin that's stimulated when we engage in loving touch with someone. And oxytocin is really the bonding hormone. So it actually helps us feel closer and more connected to someone. It's also an important hormone for women's lubrication. So just starting to engage in this loving touch is going to help us feel closer and more connected. And then we're going to be able to take step by step into sensual touch, into perhaps being intimate and kissing and touching without it necessarily leading to sex still. But then, when the time is right, having it lead into sex from there.
And so what if the problem is like a hormonal problem, or a man's testosterone is super, super, super low? for some reason. And is that something that's taken into consideration as well, and like blood work and things like that?
It is, but the truth is it's actually a factor in like a minimum of cases. So much of the time, like I think we can kind of overestimate the impact of the hormones, and it's like we want to find like the kind of the quick fix. Oh, it's my hormones, like there we go. And actually in the majority of cases it's not that at all.
Okay.
It's more emotional and psychological factors.
And so if a person is, I mean, is it, okay, let's say you have two people who are, let's say, dating. They've been dating now for, let's say, 5 years. And the last 2 have had no sex.
Yeah.
And so, and it's, let's just say it's the man that doesn't really want to engage. How do we know that it's something, if you want to work it out, I mean, and with all these things that you had spoken about, which are great, but what if it's what if it's just not a right connection? Like, what if the like chemistry just isn't there anymore? Or what if it was a different woman, or if he was dating someone else, that wouldn't be the case? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and it can be a kind of challenging one to answer because, for both men and women, we know that sex drive peaks or sexual interest peaks in the first kind of few years of the relationship, and we usually start to see what we call, the honeymoon phase or the limerence phase fade after about 18 months to 3 years. And so, often, particularly for women, there can be a myth that, my sex drive just fades when you age. But actually, we know about women that their sex drive will peak again if they get into a new relationship at any age. So, firstly, some amount of, we don't feel the same kind of spark and passion that we used to is normal in any relationship.
Right.
And that's to happen. What I think becomes really important for me is, okay, but are we willing to make an effort around this? Like, are we willing to look at what's going on? Are we willing to set time aside to engage sexually with each other? Are we willing to look at what might be going on, what we can do to kind of keep things, fun and playful and exciting, and to maintain a sex life? I think where we can run into challenges and where we probably need to start to question things can be really easy to kind of go to that place of, okay, I just don't know what it is. I just don't feel like it. And to not actually look at, what's causing this? Is this something about my relationship history that leads me to kind of pull away somewhat or not be intimate? Is this about a power imbalance in the relationship? Is this something to do with our relationship dynamic, and I'm not feeling like giving to my partner in that way anymore? Because there can be a whole lot of things that are impacting, and okay, actually, you know what? We're just not the right fit. We just don't click and we don't connect is one of them. But there's often a whole lot of things before that can be playing out.
Okay. Got it.
I know that's it's so complicated, right? So I hope that that's not too much.
No, but I mean, there are definitely many layers to this and many reasons why there is disconnection, and I can see how from one couple to another, no one's the same, and everyone has sort of a different reason behind it and how they approach it. So would you say that you are working very heavily with a lot of couples who have this. You did say that you do work with a lot of couples who their biggest struggle is not having enough sex.
Yeah. This is it's the most common thing that I work with couples on.
Oh, okay. The most common. Wow.
Yeah.
And have you noticed it with different ages? Is it most popular in a certain age range, would you say, or not really?
I think I mean, most of the clients that I end up seeing are kind of in their 30s or 40s, but I've worked with clients all the way through to their 60s who've been, struggling with this for, 20 or 30 years in their relationship. And they're finally, perhaps their kids have moved out, or they're just in a point where they're like, you know what, we actually we're really ready to deal with this now. We're really ready to look at it. It's usually I would say like the most typical kind of client that I see are couples who've been together around about the 10-year mark, or kind of around about the 15-year mark, and probably in about half of the cases that I see, these couples have children, and usually by the time they come to see me, their kids are around kind of 3 to 5 years old is the most common. They've moved through that baby stage. And a lot of the time couples have said, oh, I thought it was just because we were pregnant, and then because, we had a newborn, and that obviously kind of can throw a huge spanner in the works. And then I thought it was just because I was breastfeeding or because we were tired. And then, their kids are kind of toddlers, or they're about to start school, and they're kind of going, oh, actually, we thought it was all of these reasons, but something hasn't changed.
I see. Okay. And so, one of the other topics that I saw on your website that I found so really up my alley, which was you were on it was a news show one day, and you were talking about living apart together. That's what it was called. And I find this super interesting because there's a couple of girlfriends that I know that are doing this right now, and something that I absolutely would do if I was in a serious relationship. I mean, I think I would. I mean, I guess I can't fully make that decision, but anyway, let's just talk about what that really means. And are you seeing it as a growing trend?
Look, I am. And it was amazing how many people reached out to me after I'd first been interviewed for a print magazine on this, or a local newspaper here in Australia, and then the TV, because people were really fascinated by it. And I had then a lot of people reach out to me and say, oh, we're actually doing this, or, I've been doing this really long term, and it's amazing. So I really think that it is a growing trend. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. One, it's, it kind of practically makes sense for some people in a lot of ways. But we're also now in a time where women can be really independent as well. So there was a time when, we had to be married and living with someone almost for our survival. We're also seeing a lot more kind of blended families at the moment. And so, for a lot of the couples that have come forward have kind of said, well, yeah, I have my kids, and my partner has theirs, and it doesn't actually make sense for us to share the same house. Or, they've been through a divorce and they're coming together later in life, and they're so set up in their own place that they're like, oh God, I don't want to give up my space and my independence again. I'm so used to living on my own. So, I think it's an idea that makes a lot of sense, particularly in this, I guess, particularly for the time and place that we're in at the moment.
Totally. I mean, this would definitely be something that I would be absolutely open to. I feel maybe it's an age thing. I mean, I'm in my late 40s, and I kind of been living alone for a long time, except when I was married for a very short period of time. Did I live with someone? And before that, I lived with someone for about a year, which I loved. But I just feel, and that was in my 30s, I just feel now that I would love to just have my own space. And I'm so used to that it would be hard for me to, especially if I'm sort of grounded in a beautiful place or a home, that I wouldn't want to leave that space or something like that. But
yeah,
I wouldn't mind.
And that's the reason.
Say that again?
Oh, I was going to say, no, that is another reason that people are, finding these beautiful apartments and, they've bought them or they're renting them and they don't want to give them up to move into someone else's place.
Right. And so.
And sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I feel that there may be some couples out there who have been dating for a while and then they think like the next step is, we have to move in together now. It's like the next step if they decide whether or not they want to get married or not. And I feel that there shouldn't be really a pressure to do it. I guess that's my point. Don't feel the pressure to have to move in together because I think living apart is also really cool.
Absolutely. And I think, people are finding a lot of different ways to make relationships work these days. Living apart together, seeing other people, having more independence in some particular way, bringing someone else into the relationship. We're kind of recognizing that this nuclear family model and having, one person who's going to be our everything for such a long period of time just isn't working the way we kind of imagined it would. And so we're finding different ways of making it work, and living apart together is one of those ways.
And were these couples the one that emailed you after that show? Were they married or just dating?
Actually both. So a lot of some people have actually married and living in separate houses. Some people actually, consider themselves like actually we're life partners. This is not just, we're kind of dating until something else comes along. Right. This is us together forever. And we want to live separately. This is just how we've been doing this relationship. People who told me they were doing it for 7 years, for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, like really long-term arrangements. This wasn't just, we're going to live apart, we've just started dating and we're going to live apart until it's the right time to move in together. There's a lot of couples who are really like, no, actually, we never see ourselves going that way, but I see myself with this person, like for the rest of my life or for the foreseeable future.
Mm. And were they all, in essence, happy about that decision?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let me say that I did not hear from people who were not happy from that decision. So I had worked with some clients in therapy, and I had some friends who were in these kind of relationships before I did the story, and I was really quite overwhelmed by the amount of feedback that I got from people saying, thank you so much for speaking out about this. Often our friends and family don't understand it. My partner and I have been living this way for X number of years. It really works for us. We can't see it being any other way. We're so happy. That was the kind of feedback that I was getting.
Mm. Well, that's good. That's I like that you received that type of feedback, because that's certainly something that I have definitely thought of and think, okay, well, my next serious relationship, I'm absolutely okay with living apart, and, coming over and staying over during the week is fine. But I think, especially if either one of us have families that we have to go back to.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, it's always really important to find what works for us in relationship. I think, everyone else always wants to have an opinion of this is the way to make a relationship work. And really there is no one way. It's about finding what works for you and your partner and what works for the both of you together.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. So I also noticed that you have this amazing course called Sensual and Soulful for Women.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm intrigued.
So let me say, I might actually be renaming this course, but for me, one of the things that I really get just so lit up by and fulfilled by is supporting women to connect to their own sensuality and to feel really sexually empowered. I feel like we often live in a culture where we're kind of disconnected from our bodies and kind of disconnected from what we might want sexually. And there is so much about sex and intimacy that we're just not taught. Sex education in schools is often really based around contraception and not contracting a sexually transmitted infection. But it doesn't go into, pleasure and empowerment and explaining the ways that our bodies work and the different ways we can give our body pleasure. And so often we kind of get into our adulthood at whatever age we might be and kind of realize like, oh gosh, I still feel like I don't really know. Like I don't really know how my body works. I don't really know what I like. I don't really know how to ask my partner for what I would like. So for me, helping women discover this by giving them information and education and giving them little activities that they can do on their own to start to discover these things is just one of the things that really lights me up and fulfills me.
It sounds amazing. And I think that a lot of women have sort of lost that connection or have never really known how to connect to themselves in that way. Or maybe were brought up in a very religious household and were sort of shamed into not, really connecting there in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, both men and women can be really challenged around the sexual standards and sexual messages in our culture. But I think those messages are different for men and women. And I think there's definitely a message for women that, it's not okay. Sex perhaps should be about pleasing someone else, or, you shouldn't really enjoy it too much.
Right.
And I really, all these crazy things. So I'm really kind of passionate about breaking that down and having women feel like, oh my God, this is my body and I can enjoy it. It's okay to enjoy it. And then discovering what it is that, that they really like, because often we haven't known that it's okay to start to explore that and to find out.
It's so true. I know. It's so I love. And so what do you think that you're going to rename it? Because I love the name now.
All right. Thank you. So I'm actually, I'm relaunching my own podcast soon, which is going to be called Wholehearted, because it's about wholehearted sex, love, and intimacy. And the course name that I'm kind of sitting with at the moment is to call it the Wholehearted Woman. But whatever I call it, whether it's sensual and soul, whether I stay with sensual and soulful, or I call it the Wholehearted Woman, it will be really the same content. It's about bringing us back to ourselves and our bodies, connecting us with our pleasure, and really empowering us to find and communicate what it is that we want in regards to our sexuality and sensuality.
Could you share one tip that you tell the women in that course and how, like one tip that they could do when they're home or something?
Mm, mm. So one of my, I was like, wow, there's so much. For a woman to do by herself, one of the, I think it can be incredibly powerful and incredibly transformative is to kind of, bring yourself to kind of a still place, maybe do some movement and some deep breathing first so that your body is really kind of charged and energized. And then actually just bring your fingertips to touch each other in front of you. So almost like in prayer position, but with just your fingertips touching, and to really feel that, kind of touch. And then start to allow your fingertips to touch the rest of your hands. So you're really just gently stroking your own hands with your fingertips. And we want to keep taking full deep breaths as we're doing this, because full deep breaths is going to support feeling. It's going to support a calm mind. It's going to support sensation. And then we would gradually take that touch up into our arms. We can even use our whole hands to start to touch. It's really about touching our own body in a way that feels good. And so allowing the body to guide this touch. And I would, in the course, I take women through touching, we'll move up to the arms, but then we go to the head and face, and then all the way down the body as well. So we have literally kind of touched and stroked every inch of our own body, just finding the ways that feel good, not necessarily sexual, but just paying attention. And it can be a really, what would the word be? For some women, when they do this the first time, I had a woman in coaching actually just last week say this to me. She's like, oh yeah, I did that. And I was like, I didn't really get anything out of it. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Okay, let's she's like, oh, I was just touching, like it didn't really. I was like, okay, let's look at this. And what we kind of discovered was, although she was kind of touching herself and we'd done some work on bringing her back to her body, there was still this amount of disconnection. She had essentially not felt safe in her own body in childhood, and so she still didn't really inhabit her body. So she touched her body and she felt it, but she wasn't fully connected to it, and so she wasn't really feeling pleasure in it because she didn't have a lot of experiences. A lot of her experiences in her body had been unsafe experiences rather than pleasurable experiences. And so for her, it was like she just kind of got used to like turning off that feeling from her body. And, that's kind of, one of the outcomes that can happen. But a lot of other women will say like, oh my God, I didn't realize the kind of touch my body actually wanted. Like, wow, it's that really soft touch that I actually love, or it was so nurturing to be able to touch myself and to have exactly the kind of touch that I want. Because when someone else is touching me, I always feel like I have to just like enjoy what they give me. But actually, like I can just give myself the exact touch I want. That is probably, I think, a really great exercise. It's a really great exercise to start with and also to kind of come back to as well.
I love that. And so do you ever recommend having, once she does something like that, and inviting her partner to kind of do that for her and having it like a little play session?
Yeah, I have an exercise, and I actually have I'm not sure when the podcast goes live, but I actually have a couples course, the kind of sister couples course that I'm about to launch at the moment, called Intimacy and Desire. And in that we do kind of the a similar exercise between couples that I call body mapping. And it's about starting at one end of your partner's body and touching all the different parts of their body. It's not about, getting it right or giving some kind of amazing massage. It's about talking together about, do you like it when I do this or this? Do you like it when I touch here or here better? How is it when I do this? So you're actually experimenting with different kinds of touch all over the body. So you want to get those places that you don't always touch, in between the fingers, around the side of the ankles, the backs of the knees, up the side of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that we can find like these places like, oh my God, I get couples who, when I do this in coaching, they come back and you're like, oh, you'll never guess what we discovered doing this. It turns out my partner really wants to be touched here or to, and so they have, a lot of fun doing that. And then obviously they get to take, that kind of information into their love play. So they discover, not only the places that they or their partner likes to be touched, but they've also built up these skills for communicating around it, which I think is, it always sounds kind of boring in a way when I tell people I'm gonna help you learn to communicate about sex, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to, do that, because it can be kind of scary to start with, and it's like, no, I just want to, do it. I don't want to have to, talk about it. That sounds a bit structured, but actually just being able to say, you know what, I prefer when you do this, or could you do that again? It felt really good. Is such a powerful skill to give couples.
Yeah, I bet. Because we're not really taught this. I mean, we don't really know how to touch each other or where or how. I mean, unless you're, you read it somewhere or you have an interest in it, but it's not something that we were like really brought up or taught.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And to have actually almost any conversation about sex is not something that a lot of us were taught.
No, absolutely not. Well, definitely not in my household with my Catholic parents and very strict father. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, this has been...
I could definitely relate.
Oh, yeah. Well, this has been such a enlightening conversation. I mean, I learned so much, and thank you for really going deep about the sex and soul. I think that's sex with soul. That's such an important and beautiful way to share intimacy with a partner. And so thank you for that. Oh, by the way, how can people find you?
Oh, so you can find me on my website, which is www.isiah, McKimmie, McKimmie.com. I'm also on Instagram as Isiah McKimmie, sexologist.
Okay. And on Instagram. Okay. Facebook as well?
Yes, I am on Facebook. I'm Isiah McKimmie, couples therapist and sexologist on Facebook.
All right. And when does this couples course come out?
Oh, it's actually, we're running the first round that starts next week. So it's the 20th of, it's actually the 16th of April. So the first round may have been run, depending on when the podcast goes live, but there'll certainly be a wait list for when we run it again.
Okay. How often do you run them?
We're going to be running it twice a year.
Oh, okay. Great. Okay. And then 3 really quick questions that I ask all my guests. And I'm very curious what you're going to tell me with this question. What do you have on your bedside table, like in the drawer or on the actual bedside?
Do you know what? I have books. I have a great big pile of of books is the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
I do have a little box of toys that actually doesn't sit right beside the bed. It kind of sits over on the other side of the room at the moment, partly because it's like it's a bigger box.
Well, yes, I was actually really wondering what a sexologist has in her home at her bedside.
So I definitely, I have I have all of these books on sex to start with. I'm always either reading books on sex or spirituality. That's pretty much my entire book collection. So I have about a dozen books sitting beside my bed waiting to be read at the moment. But I certainly do have a little collection of sex toys and massage oil that actually sits just not right beside my bed. I don't have drawers in the little table beside my bed at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So it sits on the other shelf.
Okay. And is there a toy that's your favorite?
Yeah, I tend to kind of go through phases. And it can kind of depend on whether I'm staying with my partner or I've been taking some time out down in the country to do some writing at the moment. So when I'm away by myself, I have a different toy that's my favorite. But I love there's a few brands. There's a few brands that I love of particularly kind of clitoral stimulation vibrators.
Which brands? Lilo or?
So Lilo, actually, I can never pronounce it. There's a French brand, Jejour. Is that it? It's Jejeou. They do some really, really beautiful vibrators. They do a Mimi, which is like kind of looks like a mouse. From when we had like external mouses on our computers.
Right.
It kind of looks like that. It's like a little purple looking mouse. And then they have another great G-spot vibrator, a specialist G-spot vibrator, which is probably my second favorite.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Have you ever tried the Satisfier? That's what it's called, the Satisfier. I'm not sure who it's by exactly, but
I have not. No,
I'm
going to have to look it up.
Yeah, look it up. It's a it has a very slight sucking motion that goes right on the clitoris.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
I'm always interested in trying new toys and partly so I can recommend them to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Satisfier is the one I like.
Perfect. I'm gonna make a note of it because I want to try it now.
Yeah, you can, and you know what? I found. I mean, there was one I went to a sex expo. It happens every year in Brooklyn, New York, and so that's when I was introduced to it. But they also sell it on Amazon. It's called the Satisfier.
Perfect.
And let's see. Well, tell me one of the books that you are reading on sex.
So I'm actually revisiting Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think she's so amazing. So amazing. So it's kind of it's a few years since I read it. So I'm revisiting that, and then I have the Magdalene manuscripts, which is underneath, waiting to be read next.
Okay. Yeah, I have thought, it's been so many times in my mind that I'm like, you need to get that, and I haven't yet. So I need to pick that one up as well. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really curious about it. And I'll have to so actually I have to tell you that my I've also been a little detoured. I went to a book launch last night for a friend who is an amazing neurobiologist, and she's just released a book called The Women's Brain Book, which is about women's neurobiology and our hormones and how everything changes over time. And she interviewed me for one of the chapters. in that book. So I'm really excited. I just got my copy last night.
Really nice.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of gonna come in the middle and interrupt everything, because I'm really excited to hear what she has to say.
Great. And she just came out with that today in the US as well?
It was definitely released in Australia. I know, do you know what? I can't tell you the US release date, and it, even the cover may be different. I know it's being released with cover in the UK, but the Women's Brain book, and her name is Sarah McKay. You know, I kind of geek out on two things, really, like sex and neurobiology.
Oh, cool.
I think it's fascinating, so I'm really excited to read this, and I'm sure if you Google Dr. Sarah McKay, you'll find her book.
Okay. Well, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much, and I loved everything about it, and I love that when you go off to write, you bring your toys along. That's a girl after my own heart. So thank you so much. And congrats on this chapter as well. I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm going to Google it on Amazon and see if it's in the US yet.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's been such a pleasure to talk about this. I always love just opening up the conversation around this, so people know, it's actually okay, to have questions and to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. I mean, there's so much we can talk about with sex. I'd love to invite you back on the podcast, sometime in the next few months. It'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully we'll be practicing some of these techniques to enhance your sexual experiences and adding a little soul to them. And who knows, maybe the thought of living apart together is something that you are really totally digging. I don't know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are around that. So to learn more about Isiah and all of the show notes, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 76. Hope you are all having the most beautiful week wherever you are in the world. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in week after week. Much love, many blessings to all of you. Bye for now.